Welcome to Game Fondue Reviews. In this video, we're going to take a look at Roll for the Galaxy. Roll for the Galaxy is a dice game based off the popular card game Race for the Galaxy. Let's jump right in with the description of the rules, see a few example turns being played, then I'll be back for some closing remarks. This is Roll for the Galaxy, set up for a 3-player game. To set up, you deal each player one faction tile, which is basically a double tile. It's a world and a development and a home world. They're really easy to identify because the backs are blank as opposed to all other tiles in the game, which are two-sided. Then you just give each player a dice cup, a screen, a phase strip, a mat, and then a marker that goes on the one space of their galactic track, which you can see here. Then you lay out the phase tiles with the red X side up. The other side is just a black side with no X on it. These should be laid out in order from 1 to 5, which you can see there. Next, you lay out 12 victory points per player, so we're a 3-player game, so there's 36 victory points here. After that, each player draws 2 tiles from this bag and has to put one face up on the world space of their construction track, that is with the circle side up, and one face up on the development space of their construction track, that is with the side with the diamond face up. Players have to put one face up in each area, even though both tiles will have each on either side. Lastly, each player puts 3 white dice in their cup and 2 on their citizenry. This is their citizenry here, plus any bonuses received from their starting world and their faction tile. Note that you don't get any bonuses from things that are not yet built yet, like these here. So for instance, this awards 2 red to the citizenry, so this player also has 2 red here on his citizenry at the beginning of the game. The game is played in rounds consisting of 5 steps, which are roll, assign, reveal, perform phases, and manage your empire. The rulebook emphasizes that all steps are performed simultaneously by all players, but there is an official timing ruling, and that is that it goes in clockwise order, starting with the player with the lowest numbered faction tile. And then you can see the numbers on the faction tiles here, like this one is 1 and this one is 7. The game ends at the end of a round when all these VP have been earned, or a player has 12 different squares in his tableau. Note that the faction counts as 2 squares. So let's go through the phases. The first is roll. During roll, all players just take the dice in their cups and roll them behind their screen. So they're going to have a bunch of dice in front of them that nobody else can see. Next is the assign phase, where you assign these dice you've rolled to different tasks in the game. I'm going to lift the screen and put this in the center so everybody can see it while I go through this. Note that this guy has a blue die because he had 1 earned from this particular faction tile. So what you do is you lay out the dice in columns underneath the matching symbols, so you can see this is a ship symbol, so it goes underneath the ship, and here's an eye, and then here's a couple development symbols there. Some dice also have this asterisk symbol, which is wild, so you can put that under any different column. Next, each player takes any one dice, it doesn't matter which, and puts it on one of these symbols. It doesn't have to match the symbol, so for instance, if this guy wanted to, he could put this on the development symbol. Some tiles also grant reassign powers that you can use in this time, but all players start with the dictate reassign power. All reassign powers can only be used once per turn unless otherwise stated, but the dictate, which is described right here, you take any dice, you set it aside the board, then you can reassign another one. So for instance, instead of making this ship a ship, I could make this ship an explorer if I'd like to. So after all players have assigned and reassigned their dice, we move on to the reveal phase, and it's at this time that the screens are lifted. All players announce what phase they've selected, so in this particular case, the develop phase was selected. That is, whichever die space you put on, that's the phase you've selected. So all the selected phases get flipped face up, so they're no longer showing the red X side, and those are the phases that are going to happen this turn. In a 2-player game, you're going to roll 1 extra white dice from the pool, and you're going to flip that one face up if it wasn't already flipped up by a player. But with 3 or more players, you're just going to flip up whatever the player selected. So let's pretend this player also picked Develop and this player picked Explore. So that means we'd flip Explore up, and these are the phases that are going to happen during this turn. Any die that are not on spaces that were picked get returned to the cups as well as Dictate. So for instance, if this ship was over here, this and this would go back. But since this ship's at Explore, it stays. But this dictated die does go back to the cup. Next, players simultaneously perform the selected phases in number order from 1 to 5. So everybody's going to do 1 first, and everybody's going to do 2, and so on, as long as they're selected. And when you perform a phase, you use all the dice you have on it. So that's all the ones under it, and any die you've assigned to it as well. And it's important to note that you must use a die if you can. If you're unable to use a dice, however, it does return to your cup, while all used dice are returned to your citizenry here. It's also important to note that you don't have to use your die in order in the column. You can use them in whatever order you choose, but you do have to perform the entire phase before moving on to the next one. So let's go through the phases. The first is Explore, and that's number 1. It only happens if it's flipped up though, remember. So each die you have there either scouts or stocks. To scout, you choose a number of die in your area and you can discard them or abandon them. Then you draw back that many plus 1. So if you choose to abandon 0, you draw 1 still. But let's just say I abandon 1, so I put it aside, and then I'm going to draw 2 tiles back. And I can choose to put them in whichever column I'd want. So I can stack them in the development side, or I can put them in the world side, or a combination of both. You don't decide until you've drawn all your tiles, but when you put them, they always go in the bottom. So if I choose to put this on the development side, for instance, it's going to go underneath this other one. And then the used die goes here, and remember, you're going to use all your dice, so you're going to do them one at a time, so potentially you could discard tiles that you already drew earlier this turn. It's also important to note that you can abandon from anywhere in a stack. So even if this development side, for instance, was 3 long, I could choose to abandon the middle tile if I chose to do so, or what have you. At the beginning of the game, you did have to start with 1 tile in each of these stacks, but during the game, it's okay for 1 stack to become completely empty. After all players complete the phase, because remember it's simultaneous, all the abandoned tiles go back to the bag. It's also important to note that in terms of visibility, only the top tile in your stack is visible, and what you've abandoned is not visible to the other players. So that's scouting, but you can also use the dice to stock. All you do to stock is just discard the dice and move up 2 spaces. If you have many dice here, you can alternate between scouting and stocking as much as you want, or you can just perform one action many times. The next phase is develop, and to develop, you just take all of your development dice here and you put them on top of the stack. And if they ever match the value of a thing, it's immediately built. So for instance, these 2 would build this, and then they would go to my used pile. If at this point I had more dice here to develop with, they would just continue on the next tile in the stack. If, however, I still had dice left and there was no tiles left in this stack, all the remaining dice would go into my dice cup. The next phase is settle, and it works exactly like the development phase, except you put them on the world stack over here. The only difference between worlds and developments is that developments have a lasting effect that changes one of the phases for you, but worlds have an immediate effect that happens as soon as that tile is built. And that brings us up to the produce phase, which is the 4th phase of the round. During the produce phase, any die you have in the produce section, we'll just pretend that these have produce faces face up, and they're going to be put on different worlds of yours that can produce. Now, any world that is not gray can produce. So for instance, this one cannot because this has a gray number here. Fortunately, though, the space small is blue, so you can produce on the space small. So what you would do for your turn is you would take one of the dice below that and you would put them on the indicated area. The only thing to watch out for here is that each place can only have 1 good. Any goods that you can't place for any reason are just returned to your cup. And lastly is the ship phase, which is the 5th phase and final phase of the round. Each die you have there either trades or consumes. So let's put some out to describe that. So if I had these here underneath the ship, they would either trade or consume. To trade, you place a good and the die in the citizenry, and you gain money based on the world. So for instance, I would take this die and I would take any good I have. For instance, this is off the blue world, and I would put them in here. Now because this is a blue world, I get a certain number of galactic credits. Blue worlds produce 3 galactic credits, brown worlds is 4, green is 5, and yellow is 6. The other thing you can do is consume. And to consume, you do the same thing. You take 1 die and you take 1 good off of an area and you gain a certain number of points. So let's put 1 good back on here to demonstrate. If this good comes off, that's going to be 1 point. No matter what you do, it's always 1 point. However, if the good from the world matches the color of the world, you get an extra point. This is white and this world is blue, so there's no extra point there. If, however, the good was this color, that would be 2 points. 1 because you always get a point, and the second because this matches. Now finally, if the die used matches, you get 3 points. So if the die matches, that's a point. If the good matches, that's a point. And you get 1 point no matter what. It's also possible that this die matches, but the good doesn't. That would still be 2 points. But point being is you get 1 to 3 points depending how many goods match the color of the world. One important thing to note here is that purple goods always count as matching, even if they're used as the ship die action, or if they're the good placed on the world. They always count as matching the world, so they're worth at least 2 points. So after all the selected phases are complete, you finish the round with the Manage Empire phase. And you can recruit dice from your citizenry by paying 1 galactic credit each. So for instance, I'm at 3 galactic credits. I could pay 1, 2, 3, and I could add 3 of these dice to my cup. No matter how many dice you recruited or didn't recruit, you always end up putting your marker back on the 1 space of the galactic credit once you're done recruiting. And then you may recall any developers, settlers, or goods immediately to your cup. So for instance, if this guy is a developer here, I can put him right back in my cup. But that's totally optional. I can leave him out there to continue developing. Then you flip all the selected tiles back to the red X side. If the VP pool is empty or any player has 12 or more squares in his area, the game is over. The game always ends at the end of a round though, so even if somebody reaches one of those conditions during the round, you still play it out. And then you total each player's VP chips that they've earned, the value of all the buildings they've built, and the value is just equal to the cost in all cases. And any bonuses they got from 6 cost developments. You can see this one here gives you some extra points. It gives you 1 extra point per development in your tableau, and that's indicated there, but it's still worth the 6 points in addition to that bonus. Also, if you ever have a fraction in your score, you always round it up, but the player with the most points wins. Let's get going. In this example playthrough, players have already added any dice they got from their starting world or faction. So the first thing they do is they'll roll their dice simultaneously behind their screens, and they're going to move on to the assign phase and sort them. All players have sorted their dice, and normally this would be done behind the screens, but to make it easy, I put the screens aside. Now all players have to select a phase and can do any reassign powers like dictate. This guy decides to put one of these goods tiles on the development space, and then he decides to reassign by placing this one assign and moving this explore symbol underneath develop. This guy decides he wants to select settle, and he decides to select it with this one. And then lastly, this guy over here decides he wants to develop as well. So he's going to take this and put in develop. So now that all players are ready, we lift our screens, which of course are already gone, and players show what they picked. So we see 2 guys have picked develop and 1 guy's picked settle. So we flip over develop and we flip over settle, and all dice from other phases are returned to their owner's cup. So explore isn't going to happen, so he knows he gets this back, and this guy over here gets these 2 back. And this dictated one goes back, as well as this produce, like so. So because Explorer wasn't selected, we start with the development phase because it's number 2. So all players are going to do this simultaneously, but you take your development dice, including the one used to selected it, if you selected it, and you put them on that corresponding area. Because this is worth 2 and he's put 2 dice on it, it's immediately built, and these return to his citizenry. So now during the ship phase, he has an extra benefit. And this guy is going to do the same thing, except this one costs 3, so these are actually going to stay out there. It's not finished yet. And this guy has no dice in his development area, so he gets to place nothing. Next we go into the settle phase, and neither of these guys have any dice there, so nothing happens to them. But this guy is going to do the same thing. So he's going to put this dice here, and because it only costs 1 to build, he successfully built it, and then he immediately gains a blue dice to his citizenry. So he places that there, and this one returns to his citizenry as well. But now this is built in front of him. It's important to note that he has nowhere to place this since this pile is now empty, so this goes right back to his cup. Now, since the phase 4 or 5 were not selected, we're going to move right to the Manage Empire phase of the turn, and you can recruit the dice from your citizenry by paying for them. So this guy, unfortunately, only has $1, so he's going to pay that $1, and he can only add 1 dice to his cup. So he does that, and this guy's in a similar situation, but doesn't have so many extra dice, so he adds that one there. And this guy has a whole lot of money because this started him at 8, so he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dice, so he's going to put that back to the 1, because remember, you always go back to the 1, and all those dice go in there for the next turn. All these flip back over, and since nobody has ended the game, we're going to play another round. We're going to jump ahead a little bit in the game so you can see some more interesting situations. Welcome back. Players just revealed and returned any unused dice back to their cups. So the first phase we have this turn is Explore. So we're going to start with this guy, and for his first Explore action, he's going to choose to draw a tile from the bag. Because he's going to abandon 0, he just gets to draw 1, because you always draw 1 more than the number you have. So he looks at it and he decides which side he wants to put it on. He decides he'd like to put it in a settle stack. So it always goes to the bottom of the stack. But now with his next one, if he wanted to, he could abandon that, even though it's not on top. However, with his next one, he's going to get $2, so he moves up here to the 3 space. So next we move on to the settle phase, because that's the only other one selected. This guy's out of dice, and this guy just lays 1 on here. This guy puts 2 on here, which actually completes this. Then he has to remove any dice, and he immediately gets 2 red dice to his citizenry when he does that. So he's just going to remove one of his white dice and replace it with 2 red. You can remove from anywhere in your area, but that white dice was the least desirable one for him. And now we're going to come back at the end of the game to see the final situation. Welcome back. This is probably the end of the game. We have produce and ship this turn. This guy's the only guy who's producing, so he's just going to throw this out here. But then we move on to ship. This guy is going to go first because he has the lowest number, and it might be the end of the game, so players do want to go in order. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to ship this for 2 points because, again, the blue matches the area it's on. Then he's going to ship this for 2 more points for the same reason. And then he's going to ship this one here for 1 point. It's only 1 point because neither of these colors match the color of the world. There's 1 good left, but he has no dice left to ship it with. And then this guy is going to ship as well. Because this is green and this is purple, purple matches everything, he's actually going to get 3 points for this. So he takes 3, and that's all the points that are left, but any more points he's still going to get. So he's actually going to get 2 more points. And now we've reached the Manage Empire phase of the turn, but because all the victory point chips are gone from the game, we have to calculate the final score. So we add the chips, plus the value of all the worlds and developments, and remember that's just equal to their cost, plus any bonuses from any 6 cost developments. No players actually built any 6 cost developments, though this guy was building. Remember, anything you have not constructed does not score for you. Because of the mechanical and thematic similarities between Roll for the Galaxy and Race for the Galaxy, it's natural to compare them. And really they are the same game, just Roll for the Galaxy is a dice game, Race for the Galaxy is a card game. But I do think this one stands on its own. One thing that's a big difference in my opinion is there's no card symbols. Everything is very easy to understand. It's like a sentence, and there's not a lot to keep track of in your mind, which I think makes this the go-to for new players. If you haven't played Race for the Galaxy before, I would say this is where you start. And also, I think the gameplay is different enough that it warrants its own space in a gamer's shelf, because, you know, rolling the dice versus having to know what's in the card deck and basically managing your hand makes for a very different game. It can be very tactical, but you can still kind of choose what you pick. And because you don't get a privilege of the thing you pick, the strategies in the game are very different. Race for the Galaxy tend to be dominated by produce, consume, strategies, whereas this, you kind of have to adapt more to the situation at hand. You can't just do the thing you want every time, because then that kind of results in you not having enough dice in your cup for the next turn. So if you haven't played Race for the Galaxy before, I strongly recommend you check this one out. Even if you didn't like Race for the Galaxy, if it was because of reasons of, complexity or just all the symbology and just things like that and the fiddliness of it, this has basically addressed all those issues. So if you're into that, check it out. That's Roll for the Galaxy.